You are listening to the Co-Movement Gym podcast. The following is a conversation with Andrew Cieply. Today we're going to discuss exercises designed to keep runners healthy and strong. Running gets a bad rap because of the high injury rate. The majority of these injuries can be prevented with proper strength training, mobility, and program design. I would like to thank our sponsors, Native Pass Supplements, Lombardi Chiropractic, Home Sweet Home Cleaning, and Thin Line Martial Arts. If you are enjoying this content, I ask that you support these companies in the description and take advantage of the enticing discount they're providing our listeners by using our code COMO15. That's COMO 15. I thank each and every one of you for being on this journey with us. Now, please enjoy the show. Andy, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Josh. How are you?
Good, man. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that's pretty popular, and that's the best exercises for runners. We all know that, runners have a high injury rate, and we're going to go over the common injuries and some exercises that are going to help improve, their running durability and longevity.
Yeah, totally. It's a good one because, a lot of runners don't strength train. But over the last, I'd say 10, 20 years, more and more are learning that it's beneficial, and they probably should. So we're just going to kind of spitball at some of our favorite exercises that we think would benefit runners the most.
Yeah, for sure. I just started running back in January again. I had like a 10-year hiatus. And so I had, I've had 2 calf tweaks. And some small stuff pop up, but me and you and Bob have done some research and dove into some stuff that I think can help other people. And so, let's get into that. So I want to first start with the common injuries. Okay. And so for my list, Andy, feel free to add to this list. I have runner's knee, Achilles tendonitis, hamstring pulls, plantar fasciitis, shin splints, IT band issues, and then, calf issues. What else? Can you add anything to that list or?
That's pretty comprehensive. The only things I might add would be back pain occasionally. If somebody's form is really off, sometimes runners get back pain. And then what was the other one I was thinking of? Perineal tendonitis, which is something that not many people have heard of, but it's your perineal tendon runs alongside that bone that sticks out of the side of your ankle, on the outside of your ankle. And some runners get tendonitis down there. I've had that before. It's really common.
Okay, yep. Sure. Yeah.
But I've had that. No, your list is very...
Yeah, no, I had that on my right side, Andy. That one time I went for that 12-mile run. I had that same pain on my ankle. So.
Okay. Yep.
Nice, dude. So let's start off with what do you got, buddy, for an exercise or a stretch here that can help runners?
Well, what's interesting is, so you went a different direction than me. You went with you wanted to list some common injuries, and then I think you're looking for some exercises that might help with those injuries. I just went at it from a standpoint of running does require some strength, and especially if you want to perform better, and certainly if you want to prevent injury. And I sort of made a list of exercises that I thought would benefit runners in terms of just making their lower body more resilient and better able to perform. And then I just went through glute exercises, quads, hamstrings, calves, that sort of stuff. So yeah, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with a certain area of the body or an injury?
No, I actually did the same thing, Andy. I just came up with a list of exercises for the lower body for runners to help improve running. So yeah, we did the same thing.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, maybe start with the glutes.
Sure.
The glutes being the main muscle that propels you forward in running. If you're doing it correctly, it's generally that hip extension from the glutes that it's your motor. It keeps you moving forward. I think I wrote down single leg deadlifts as probably my
Mhm.
favorite exercise for runners. There's going to be a common theme here. A lot of my exercises are unilateral, which I think is a
Mhm.
really good idea for runners to train. Just because running is a unilateral sport, for one thing, you're always on one leg at a time. And unilateral exercises also help you develop hip stability and some of that dynamic core control that runners need to have. So single leg deadlifts are a technical exercise. You know that they're hard for people to learn. So
Yep.
deadlifts are fantastic for glute strengthening. And if people want to just do deadlifts, that works beautifully.
Mhm.
But if you can progress to learning how to do a single leg deadlift, I think that's one of the best things for runners.
Yeah, that's funny. I had the same exercise and I'm a huge fan. So I guess
Nice.
we're leaving it at that. It's a great movement for a balance, stability, glute strength. Yeah, you and I both like that. So that's a
And
good one.
hamstrings.
And
Yep.
hamstring, right? Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
did you have anything else for glutes or that was the only one that I
You know,
had for glutes.
Me too, but the reason for that is a lot of the exercises that we do for like the quads, things like
Mhm.
squats and lunges and whatnot, that all works the glutes as well. If we're trying to
Mhm.
target the glutes, then I like deadlifts and single leg deadlifts. But the glutes are going to get a lot of work from a lot of the other exercises that we name also.
Yeah, yeah, I agree completely. So speaking of that, let's jump into one of mine for I would call it quads and glutes and hamstrings would be the split squat. Um, I'm a big
Mm-hmm.
fan of the rear leg elevated split squat. And it's funny, my glutes are always super sore the next day after doing these.
Yep.
And again, it's a unilateral movement. I'll elevate my rear foot on like a 12-inch bar or a box. And yeah, I think that's a phenomenal exercise for runners. Do you have that on your list, bud?
Yeah, actually, for the quads, my number one exercise was the rear leg elevated split squat. For the
Okay.
listeners, I'll just throw in that I looked some of this information up ahead of time. It's interesting to see how much force. Some people might say, "Why strength train if you're a runner?" It's not a strength. It's not like powerlifting or bodybuilding. It's not a strength movement. Most people would think, but the
Mhm.
force production that these muscles generate is massive. Like so, for the glutes generate 1.5 to 3 times the force of your body weight
Mhm.
when you're running. So that's a lot, like twice your body weight, essentially. The quads are like 4 to 6 times your body weight in their force production. The quads take a beating, especially running downhill. So that's a
Sure.
really important muscle group to get strong. Um, what the quads do is mostly stabilize the knee during foot strike and help
Mhm.
to decelerate you. Like when you're running downhill, so you don't run out of control super fast downhill. The quads are kind of your brakes, and they take a lot of force.
Mhm.
Yeah, my number one was the rear leg elevated split squat. Um, Although you could also do step ups or walking lunges if a rear leg split squat is too hard for you. It's a bit of an advanced exercise. It takes a minute to learn.
Mhm. Mhm.
But again, the single leg exercises, that core control, not being lazy with your core and twisting or rotating side to side. I love them for that purpose. The great thing with the rear leg elevated split squat too is you get a nice hip flexor stretch on the non-working leg, which is
Mhm.
also beneficial for runners who often have tight hip flexors. So you can work
Mhm.
on your range of motion with that exercise too.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. Yeah, I've experienced all those things. And yeah, that'll continue to be on my list also. So that's interesting. The stat you said with the quads taking so much more of a beating than the glutes with running. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, your glutes are really just propelling you forward. And so they kind of just have to push your body weight forward. And if you're
Mhm.
running fast, then maybe it's 2 or 3 times your body weight. But the quads, man, they eccentrically contract to prevent you from collapsing essentially on every foot strike. And the
Mhm.
faster you're going, they can take a lot. And especially like I said, if you're running downhill, they take a lot of force.
Sure.
In my
Well, you're
recent ultra marathon, the quads were the thing that got worked the most, and it was mainly from the downhills. I figured out.
yeah, I remember you
Yeah,
saying that they were pretty scorched. And so yeah, that makes complete sense now. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
cool. What else do you have for quads, Andy? Anything else for
Well,
that?
the other thing I had was, yeah. So if the unilateral stuff, if you're a total beginner and you don't quite have the balance and you want to start some strengthening, but you're not ready for the rear leg split squat, elevated split squat, just doing regular squats is fantastic. We encourage
Mhm,
that all the time. It's a basic human movement everyone should be able to do. And if you're starting out with running and you've never strength trained before, probably things like box squats and goblet squats are going to be the place to begin. But eventually
mhm,
getting to those lunges, step ups, and rear leg elevated split squats would be the ideal if you're training for
mhm,
running.
mhm. Yeah, 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 for sure. The other day I did goblet squats with the version that you showed me with the band around your knees to help with external
Yeah.
rotation.
Oh, yeah.
Um, Dude, I only did
Yep.
like I was just doing 5 sets of 10 and I only worked up to 45 pounds because I didn't want to be sore the next day. But I was
Mhm.
sore.
Me
And
too.
so, yeah, it's an effective movement for sure. So, especially with the band version that you showed. So, that was good for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
you feel that in your glutes too, which is what we were saying earlier. Like a lot of these exercises are also going to get your glutes.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I was sore glutes, hamstrings, and quads, so it was hit everything. A
Nice.
movement that I love, I think you're a fan too, is that reverse sled drag. I know knees
Mm-hmm.
over toes is a big fan of that. If this is a little harder for people that don't have a sled, but if you do have a sled or access to a sled, a reverse sled drag, basically just backwards walking, pulling a weight. It's helped my knees. It generates really good blood flow for a warm up. I generally will do 10
Mm-hmm.
minutes of dragging the weight before a leg workout just for active warm up, and it works really well. And Andy, I know you have a lot of clients that use that movement too.
A ton of them, yeah. And actually, the sled drag and sled push were both on my list. I just had it down in a section at the bottom that I labeled extras. But yeah,
Nice.
that's a good one for terminal knee extension, which is the range of motion that
Mhm.
you're really in on foot plant all the time. So it's perfect for running. And
Yeah.
sled
No.
drags are what I like about sled drags is they're good for anyone. It's an exercise that you can't injure yourself with. It'd be very hard
Mhm.
to. There's not really a concern about form. It's not a really technical exercise. I use
Mhm.
sled drags with elderly clients, with people who are total beginners, and it works great for everybody.
Yes. Yeah. We've had big success with that. Um,
Yep.
okay, so for one with quads there, I looked up and I've been trying this movement for a while now with it's another knees over toes. It's the VMO squat. So it would be an air squat, but with your feet together, toes pointed forward, and your heel is elevated like 1 to 2 inches,
Hmm.
allowing your knee to travel over your toes. And so it's like a goblet squat, except your feet are together, and your heel is elevated. And that really emphasizes the quad, that VMO area.
Mm-hmm.
I like doing those also.
Sure. I mean, that's starting to get a little specialized, but if you were to like have more specialty exercises in there,
Mhm.
I think things like that, sissy squats, or even Peterson step ups are all. I mean, if someone is really trying to dig deep into this, I'd look those up as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, what else you got, Andy?
For the quads, that's it. Maybe before we move further down the leg, we'll hit. I've got glute medius and TFL, your
Okay.
tensor fascia latae. Those two muscles I'm putting pretty much together because those are really your hip abductors. They bring your if you're standing just like we would all normally stand. If you bring your leg out to the side, that's
Mhm.
abduction at the hip. So these are the muscles that kind of push your legs apart or pull your legs apart, however you want to think about it. The glute med and the TFL are super important for runners because they stabilize the pelvis and they prevent like one side of the pelvis from dropping more than it should.
Mhm.
And keeping a nice neutral pelvis is really important for good running form. You don't
Mhm.
want that to break down, which it will over the course of a very long run. But the stronger those muscles are, the more you can keep good form for longer. So
Mhm.
with the glute med and the TFL exercises that I've got would be like a lateral band walk, or in our
Mhm.
gym we call them monster walks. Maybe that's something people can look up online.
Mhm.
People know the exercises like clamshells, for example, or the goblet squats with the thigh band. I've got it written down here because that thigh band really does a good job on the glute med and the TFL.
Mhm.
Um, and it's the great thing is the glute med and the TFL are also heavily used in unilateral exercises, like all those the rear leg elevated split squats, the single leg deadlift. In order to keep a nice neutral pelvis in those exercises, those muscles need to be really active and engaged. So it all kind
Mhm.
of all these exercises kind of work everything. But if you want to really focus on those things, I love the lateral band walks
Mhm.
and the goblet squat with the thigh band.
Yeah, yeah, you and I both. I know that I use the band walk, the monster walk there for a good warm up or cool down again for the legs. Generally
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make you sore, but it's amazing how much it activates that region that you were just describing. It's comical, especially with clients that have
Oh,
never really activated that. It's very, very hard.
yeah. It burns the side of the hip.
Yeah.
Or another way that people could work this muscle would just be to do it's worked in a side plank because it's the muscle
Mhm.
that helps keep you level when your hips drop. Usually that's because you're not activating that glute med.
Mhm.
Or you can even try to do a side plank where you raise the upper leg in the air a little bit to make it even more intense. But those are
Yeah.
ways that you can try to work these muscles as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think what Andy, what else do you have for that body part there? I don't have anything specific.
That's really it. The important thing I want people to know is just that it stabilizes the hips and pelvis, and it prevents your pelvis from dropping to one side or the other with each foot strike. And
Mhm.
I can mention that that glute med takes 2.5 to 3.5 times your body weight, also with every foot
Mhm.
strike. So it does a lot of work. I mean, it's taking a few 100 pounds of pressure every single time in force production. So getting that nice and strong is going to help out a lot with running.
Mhm. Back pain, headaches, and discomfort plague the majority of humans walking around each day. Chiropractic care can be the solution to feeling your best. I know for me personally, it has had a huge impact on how I feel day to day. The problem is that many people fear going to the chiropractor and getting their first adjustment. The team at Lombardi Chiropractic are the best of the best, a team that I've worked with for over 12 years. Visit their website at lombardichiropractic.com, and when you call, let them know you are a listener of the Co-Movement Gym podcast. Did you know a clean house reduces anxiety, increases your productivity, improves sleep, and decreases stress? Yes, all of those health benefits just from having a clean house. The problem is that no one finds cleaning fun, except for the great folks at Home Sweet Home Cleaning. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast and receive 20% off deep cleans for all clients who sign on using their reoccurring services and start enjoying a clean house today. The majority of supplements on the market are junk and a waste of money. Lack of regulation allows these companies to sell cardboard and a pill, and they get away with it. It's important to purchase your supplements from a company you trust, which for us at Co-Movement is Native Path Supplements. Shop their products at nativepath.com and use code COMO15 for a nice discount at checkout. That's COMO 15. Okay. So let's see. What you want to go down farther now? Calf, Sandy?
Nah, well, we'll get there in a sec. We'll finish off the upper leg maybe with hamstrings, since we're
Okay,
still in
sure.
the upper leg. And the hamstrings, just because I've got this up right now, they take anywhere from 2 to 9 times your body weight in terms of force production, and that
Wow.
depends on the speed you're going. If you're running at a nice slow, say you're running zone 1, 10, 11 minute miles, your hamstrings are probably only taking about 2 times your body weight, and they're
Mhm.
really mostly just working to kind of help propel you forward with the glutes. But if you're sprinting, where you have that massive range of motion and you're really trying to explosively extend your hip, that's when they're
Mhm.
taking about 9 times your body weight. And this is the reason why, like long distance runners, very rarely will strain or tear their hamstrings. But
Mhm.
sprinters, it happens all the time. They're sprinting down the track and then they suddenly pull up and they're hopping on one foot because they've torn their hamstring right off the bone. Nine
Mhm.
times your body weight in force.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So we want those guys strong for sure. Yeah. I did have one hamstring exercise on there. I'm curious to see if it's the same as yours. What did you have?
The Nordic curl.
Yeah. I had GHD raise. Same thing, basically.
Yeah, same thing. Yep, yep,
Mhm.
yep.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Why
if
is
people
it?
would know where the GHD was, so I said Nordic curl. But yeah, same thing.
Why is that such a good exercise? I don't know why. I just know it is. I know so many things cross behind the knee and it strengthens the hamstrings, but like, why do you think that's basically like the number one hamstring exercise?
For me, I think it's because, for one thing, you put the hamstrings through pretty much a full range of motion. You know, when you're at
Mhm,
the bottom of it, you're laid out horizontal and your knee is fully extended. And you pull yourself all the way up to where, if your knees drop in the GHD, then you're actually going beyond 90 degrees.
mhm,
And, I also just think that it, it's it takes a lot of force. I mean, it's not an easy. It's not like getting on a hamstring curl machine at the gym where you're curling like 30 pounds. You're
mhm.
trying to curl your entire body weight of your torso with
Yep.
just your hamstrings. It's very
Yep.
challenging, and I think it's a really great benchmark for if you can get to the point where you can do a good full range of motion Nordic curl or GHD hamstring curl,
Mhm,
or especially like reps of them, then you know you've got good strong hamstrings.
mhm,
Whereas maybe if you're going to the like Planet Fitness doing a hamstring curl machine, you're like, okay, I'm doing 50 pounds, I'm doing 60 pounds. Like, what's good? I don't know. But
mhm,
this exercise I just see as like a really awesome benchmark for you have good control of your hamstrings, good control of your core and pelvis if you're not like cheating and overarching
mhm.
your back or piking at the hips. And you're going through that full range of motion, like I said. If I can see someone do a Nordic curl with good form, then I'm like, your hamstrings are in good shape. You're not going to get injured, most likely.
So a question for you. So like GHD raises on the GHD machine, I'm pretty good at. Generally can add some weight behind my neck for 8 reps. But the Nordic curl, I cannot
Right,
do a full rep of that for even one rep done
right,
perfectly. Actually not even close. And so for
right.
listeners, yeah, there is a huge difference. I'm not saying that you can't do it. You could do the easier versions that I do where I pike my hips and whatnot.
Mhm.
But man, oh man, I'm not even close to doing a full Nordic curl with my hips extended. Have you ever done one,
Yeah.
Andy? You have?
No. So I was actually going to say no, no, no. I was actually going to say so. We're in the same boat there, and I think most people will be. I think it's extremely rare that you can find someone that can do a full
Mhm,
Nordic curl to where their like belly and chest touch the floor and their hips don't
mhm,
pike. The
mhm.
GHD machine is easier because it allows your knees to drop down a little bit below where they started,
Yes.
um, and that makes a huge difference in terms of like taking some of the strain off of the hamstrings. Whereas a Nordic curl, you can't quote unquote cheat it in that way. Your hamstrings have to do all the work. And
Mhm.
so I would say it's actually the GHD hamstring curl that is my number one exercise. That's the one that I like to see people being able to do for reps. And I think that's
Yep.
fantastic. The actual Nordic curl where your feet are, or where your knees are on the floor and they can't drop below that level, is in a super advanced exercise that you're not going to find many people being able to do. I can't
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. I started doing that version when I was coached with Ido Portal, and the way that he had me score my progression with that, because I couldn't do the full version, was from my kneecap to where my nose touched the ground, the distance between the two. That's how I
Mhm.
knew I was getting better. That the farther I could extend my chin or my nose from my kneecap, the stronger I was getting essentially. And so, but
Right.
even when I was training them twice a week, I still never got close to the full hip extension. That to me is an unbelievable amount of strength.
Oh my God. Yeah. I can't imagine having hamstrings that strong. And honestly, that's a level of strength that is beyond what any runner would ever need. I mean, I'm sure that maybe like Usain Bolt, who has incredibly powerful hamstrings for all his sprinting, maybe he can do a full Nordic curl. But
Yep.
for most people, there's no way. But I think if you can do a good form GHD hamstring curl,
Hmm.
you're in
Hmm.
great shape for running.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. Very cool. Anything else for hamstrings? The only one I had, let's see here on my
sure.
list. Yeah, what else you got, bud?
Well, just because that, the GHD hamstring curl even is so challenging,
Hmm.
I would also say that if people want to start somewhere else, they can start with like heel slides on the floor, where you get into
Oh yeah.
basically you're laying on your back on the floor, and then you pull your heels towards your butt. But the
Hmm.
key is you need to keep your hips extended the whole time. You're trying not to let your hips pike on that one either. So as you
Hmm.
pull your heels across the floor to your butt, your hips should be rising and they should be staying
Hmm.
perfectly straight. You can
Hmm.
do that a single leg version as well. If you want to make it more challenging, you can even wrap a band around your legs and attach it to something that's out in front of you. So you're pulling the band in towards your butt, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So that would be my only other idea aside from the GHD.
Can you do a single leg version of that, Andy?
Yeah, I can, and it's
Mhm.
tough, but I
It
can do
is.
that. Yep.
Okay, yeah. I
Yep.
like the double leg version. I haven't tried the single leg version in a long time, but the last time I remember trying that, that was tough. I remember trying single leg hamstring curls on the Swiss ball, and I couldn't do them. So maybe that's
Okay.
harder.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yep.
sure, but yeah, the single leg, yeah, that it's funny. I do the GHD raises, but I should add those in. I remember how great that movement was. That was good.
Yeah, and I'll say too, where I start a lot of clients who can't do the GHD hamstring raise is we do the negative version of that.
Mhm.
They just start upright and they lower themselves eccentrically about 10 seconds down until they're horizontal. And if they can
Yep.
do that under control, that's fantastic. They don't need to be able to pull themselves back up. We'll get there eventually. But if you can just
Hmm.
do negatives, that's great hamstring strengthening.
Hmm. Yeah,
Mm.
that's cool. So that was it for hamstrings.
Yeah, that's what I've got for hamstrings. Yep.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Where do you want to move now? Calves or right?
Yeah, the calves.
Okay. All
Yep.
right. Yeah. So for people listening, like I said, I started running again, not high volume. I'm increasing my volume now, but I've had two calf strains, nothing super serious, but since running, what's that, 7 months ago, you and I, Andy, have decoded my running form mechanics and how horrible that was. So we're fixing that. But
Yep.
one thing that's very interesting is I didn't realize over the last 10 plus years how weak my calves got. Right. Cause I'm not
Mhm.
playing basketball. I wasn't running. I'm jump roping, I was doing some of that, but that's about it for calves. And now that I'm doing some isolated calf work, I am amazed at how weak my calves are. And so I'm interested to see what you have for exercises to keep these guys healthy and strong. What do you got, bud?
Yeah, and the calves are so important to keep strong. So the calves are going to basically be your gastrocnemius and your soleus muscle. The
Mhm.
soleus is underneath the gastrocnemius. A lot of people don't know about that one, but these are probably the most important muscles for runners because these are the ones that are most used in propelling you forward, along with
Mhm.
the glutes. But in the lower leg, these do all the work. The gastrocnemius takes 2 to 3 times your body weight, but the
Mhm.
soleus, which is probably the most injured muscle in runners, takes 6.5 to 8 times your body weight in force when on each foot strike. And it's
Mhm.
not a very big muscle either, so that's something really worth getting stronger. Um, I've got one other interesting point here before we go on to the exercises. I just wrote this down that the calf muscles are also the ones that are most susceptible in the whole body to sarcopenia, which is like age-related muscle loss. We all know that as you get older in years, you lose muscle, and you tend to lose it in the soleus and the gastrocnemius faster than anywhere else in the body. So that's
Mm-hmm.
another good reason for people who want to like continue to be able to run into their later years, to keep these muscles strong and well trained to prevent
Mm-hmm.
that muscle loss as they get older.
Mm-hmm.
As far as exercises, though, I don't really have too much for them aside from the ones that most people already know, which are calf raises. And there's a
Yep.
lot of different ways to do calf raises. But if you're trying to target the soleus, then you want to do it with a bent knee. So you're sitting on a
Mm-hmm.
bench and your feet are on the ground, and you put some weight on your thighs and you do your calf raises that way. Whereas if you want to target the gastrocnemius, then you would do them with a straight knee, which means you're standing up doing your calf
Mm-hmm.
raises. And that's how most people do them. So again, most people are kind of ignoring the soleus, which is actually the more important muscle.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I have too for this. A version that Tammy Alcott showed me was, and I think I showed you this, Andy, where you put one foot on a bench or a box,
Mm-hmm.
and then the leg that's on the ground is the working leg, and you keep it straight, and then you can hold weight or
Yep.
not, and then you do your calf raises that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think she stands on like a 1 or 2 inch platform to increase the deficit. And so
Yep.
she has me doing 3 sets of 15 per leg of that movement per day. And I'm doing also
Nice.
3 sets of a bent leg version. So the same exact thing, but I'm bending my leg slightly instead of keeping it locked.
Mm-hmm.
And because she's had similar soleus issues as I have, and she said that is the key for her. And so, do you like that protocol?
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I really like that you. I was going to mention this in a second, but you already got to it. Was doing it on a deficit, meaning that the ball of your
Mhm.
foot is on a 1 to 2 inch platform or book or whatever, because it
Yep.
increases the range of motion and actually gives you a bit of a stretch in those muscles at the bottom,
Hmm.
which is really important. A lot of people do have tight calves, and if you can kind of break into that new range of motion and strengthen yourself in that extreme range of motion, then you're going to be less prone to Achilles tendinopathies and gastroc and soleus strains. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool. It's funny you mentioned the would you say sarcopenia for the
Yeah.
calves? Did you say that? Is
Yep.
that like muscle wasting or like atrophy? Is that the same
Yeah.
thing or no? Yeah.
Yep.
So
It's just the kind of atrophy that happens as you get older. Yep.
yeah, it's interesting because if you look around, like um a lot of people, like I don't know, let's say 50 or over, their calves are tiny, like pencils. And it could be
Yeah.
from obviously, not using them or not strength training them, but also like you said, you're more apt to lose muscle mass down there. So that's interesting, huh?
Yep. Yep.
All right, dude. So let's see here. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, the only calf. Did you have anything else for calves or no?
I didn't. I mean, that's
Okay.
really the range of motion in the calves is really just what it is. It's plantar flexion and dorsiflexion, and
Yep.
that's really there's machines and stuff that you can use, but you're doing essentially the same thing. It's basically like pressing
Mhm.
on the gas pedal with your foot is
Yep.
how you strengthen those things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Let's see. I have a few more things on here. Again, Tammy introduced this to me a few weeks ago, and I've been doing it. Toe yoga. I think I
Oh,
mentioned it.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned it to you today in the gym before this call, and
Yep.
uh, like my feet are weak. Again, I wouldn't have thought that, or really, I've never trained them, like my toe strength and arches and all of that. But it makes sense, right? Like if you're going to do a handstand, you want strong, fingers and wrists and stuff. And so,
Yeah.
I've been doing a toe yoga routine. It literally takes like 3 minutes a day. And that's sort of like isolating the big toe, and then isolating the 4 digits, on the outside, and then doing
Mm-hmm.
like trying to lift a sock with your toes, so to strengthen the arch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm already getting better. 2 weeks in, I'm getting better, but it's comical because I'm not like I just don't have strong feet. So I'm looking forward to seeing the benefits of that. Do you do anything for your feet strength or no, or have you?
No, I don't really, aside from the fact that I've run a lot and I also go barefoot and I wear barefoot shoes a lot, which I think helps a lot with foot strengthening. But I've
Or
seen those YouTube videos about that toe yoga kind of stuff, and I've tried
Mhm.
doing them in my living room at home alongside like the people instructing. It's really hard, like to control each individual toe. Like some of the people in these videos can, it's almost like it's a hand. They can like move each
Mhm.
toe separately and stuff, and I don't have that control, but it's really
Oh
cool.
yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely not moving anything separately other than the big toe. The other four are like a clump that just,
Right.
just moved together. It's funny because as we're talking on this, I'm sort of like doing it. I'm barefoot now in the studio. But yeah,
Nice.
it's difficult. So yeah, so people can look that up on YouTube if they want. I thought that was really interesting. The did you have anything else for feet, Andy, or no?
No,
Nothing for feet?
I'm good with
Okay.
the feet. Yep.
Okay, one I have a few other
Yep.
things. One for the feet, I think. It's where you take like a dowel or like a broomstick or a lacrosse ball and you roll out the bottom of your feet.
Okay.
I think you had mentioned to me before that that helps like plantar fasciitis, right?
Yeah, that's the usual thing that they tell you to do is roll like a frozen water bottle if you want to ice it also. But yeah, just to stretch out the plantar fascia. Yep.
Yep, yep. So I do that once a day, maybe 2 minutes per foot. I just try to smash some things around. The other thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't again realize how tight my feet are, but Tammy was showing me like where you take your hand and you grab your foot and you like bend the digits like forward, backwards, you twist them, like all of the bones and stuff in there are obviously supposed to move in a healthy way. And,
Yeah.
I think I would say most people they don't. And so, I've been doing that. And it's interesting, like the big toe for me, I know I've jammed them many times, probably broke them. Like it hurts to move, like it's sort of stiff. And so I've been
Mm.
working that also, like a manual manipulation.
Yeah, that's probably a really good idea because it's the same thing that we do all the time with our hands. We're always trying to
Yeah.
stretch out each finger and we're always doing that with our fingers and our hands, but we never do it with our feet. But it's probably a really good idea.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then let's see here. Yeah, the only other thing I have is like foam rolling, which is pretty generic, but I think it's effective with the quads, hamstrings, calves, feet, just getting blood flow and all of that. And, up until some of these little tweaks, I've just been really bad at all of that, like for a while. Now that I'm into something newer, I was able to get away with a lot of this for a long time, like with gymnastics, like ring work and handstands and some basic, strength training with the lower body, just because I've done it for a long time. But now that running again
Mm-hmm.
is just really brand new, and cycling for the most part, I'm having to analyze and take this stuff more seriously. So I'm encouraging people, no matter where they are in their running journey, beginner, intermediate, or advanced, I would definitely add, I would say 2 days a week of some basic strength training that we've just described, and I think it's going to help tremendously.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If those are all that you have, I've got also the core.
Okay, yeah,
I
great.
think
Yeah, I
that's
don't
really
have anything
important
for the
because a
core.
lot of people, you know, a big issue with a lot of people's running, if they don't have the best form yet, is that they don't have a very engaged core. And it might just be core
Mhm.
weakness for a lot of people. I mean, at the gym, we see a lot of new clients who can't engage their core, or if they can, it's very, very weak. And they're not able to hold certain positions like a plank for very long. Your
Mhm.
core needs to be engaged, not that you're consciously like flexing your abs or anything, but it needs to be engaged during running in order to prevent a lot of excessive motion in the upper body, the twisting side to side that you see people do when they run. That's a
Mhm.
lot of times due to an inactive core. So just anything to strengthen your core and be able to hold a nice neutral spine position, like being able to hold a good plank for a minute or two, being able to do I always love hanging knee raises. It's one of my favorite core exercises, just to like strengthen those muscles. A hollow
Yep.
body hold works perfectly well too. And even some rotational stuff like the cable rotations
Mhm.
for your obliques. I like that as well. But I would tell runners to not neglect their core and at least make sure that it's up to a decent standard. Being able to hold, like, let's say a 2-minute plank with really good form. That's
Mhm.
going to go a long way towards preventing your form from breaking down at the later stages of a race.
Yeah, I had someone the other day ask about like they were getting low back pain when they were running. And I said to
Mm.
them, most likely they were overextending or like hyperextending while they were running. And so that to me was sort of pointing out, that they probably have a weaker core or one that's not engaged. And so, yeah, they need
So
to
you
get
mean
strong.
overextending their spine?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Do you agree with that? Like it's sort of like they're running like with a Donald Duck butt type thing.
Yeah, it could definitely be that they're running with that anterior pelvic tilt. And it
Mhm.
could also be if you're overstriding and landing with your heel way out in front of you, that
Mhm.
creates kind of a jarring foot strike that affects the ankle, knee, hip, and the low back as well. I think
Mhm.
probably that overstriding is the main reason that a lot of people get low back pain when they run. If they could learn
Okay.
to like take shorter, softer steps that have less of an impact traveling right up
Mhm.
through the body, I think that problem would go away. But certainly the core strengthening should help a lot
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't
Yeah.
think about the overstriding. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I really like L sits. That's a more of an advanced version from the hanging knee
Mm-hmm.
raise and like toes to bar. If you want to work up that high. But yeah, you definitely need a strong core. I've realized that also with swimming, like it's amazing when you swim correctly how much of your core that you use.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I wake up sometimes in the middle of the night after a long swim workout, and my psoas is so
Mm-hmm.
not, I don't know if it's tight, but it's aching so deep that it's like
Huh.
it's uncomfortable. And that's it's so much psoas work in swimming correctly. And so yeah, I don't even know where I'm going with that. I guess there's just a lot of core involved with that too. So
Yeah, it's really interesting to when you take up a new sport or something like swimming, to see what ends up being sore and worked. Sometimes you notice muscles that you've never really felt before, and you're like, oh wow, that's something that this activity uses, and I should probably strengthen that muscle.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and stretching too, like for me, the psoas will get really tight. And so, I'll have to,
Hmm.
stretch that with like some arch work and different things. But yeah, it's good. Anything else, Andy? What do you got, bud? Are we done?
Well, well, just one more thing.
Yep.
This is something that people don't really think about, but it's really important for distance runners. If you're looking to run, 15K, half marathon, certainly marathon and beyond, um, your posture is really really important. And what you'll see is, if you see someone who's doing, let's say, a marathon, when they're at mile 5, they're running with a good upright posture, shoulders are back,
Mhm.
everything looks great. But as they
Mhm.
get tired and those postural muscles start to fatigue later on, and you catch them at mile like 20, 22, 24, they're kind of
Mhm.
slumping, almost like we all do when we sit in chairs with good posture, but then eventually we start to slump. That
Mhm.
happens to runners too, and that makes you a lot less efficient. So strengthening the muscles that give you good posture is really important. My favorite way to do it, honestly, is with a farmer's carry. And farmer's
Oh.
carries are usually thought of as a grip strength exercise, which they
Mhm.
certainly are. But if you've ever done a farmer's carry, then when you're holding those heavy dumbbells, the dumbbells kind of drag you down into a slouching posture. So with my clients, I have them hold the dumbbells, but then I teach them to keep their chest up and engage those postural muscles in their mid
Mhm.
back.
Mhm.
And I think if you can get good at doing that with heavy dumbbells, then you at least get a sense of which muscles need to engage to maintain that posture. And it can
Mhm.
help you to keep them engaged in the later stages of a run.
Wow, I never thought of that. So they're doing a farmer's carry and they're retracting and depressing their scapula. Would that be right?
Well, you don't have to depress because the
Okay.
weights are going to naturally do
Oh,
that. Your scaps are going to
sure.
be in a depressed position.
Sure.
But mostly what I'm focusing on is thoracic extension of my spine.
Okay.
So I'm really thinking of like just kind of chest up, which
Hmm.
kind of does draw your shoulder blades back, together. Not that I'm trying to
Hmm.
actively retract, but when you bring your chest up, your shoulder blades do come into a nice
Hmm.
neutral or slightly retracted position. But you can
Yep.
just feel the muscles that control thoracic extension, those erector muscles in the middle of your back, working to pull your chest up.
Hmm.
And with a heavy farmer's carry, grab a couple like 70-pound kettlebells and do that. It actually takes some work that you really want to slouch. It takes some work to get your chest up and get to that good posture. And
Hmm.
when you get towards the end of like a 2-minute farmer's carry, those muscles are really you're having to put a lot of effort in to keep your posture where it's supposed to be. And that's kind
Hmm.
of how it feels at like in the final 10K of a marathon when your whole body is falling apart, the wheels are falling off, and your form is going to hell, and you want to
Hmm.
start slouching. Knowing how to engage those muscles and pull your chest up to where it should be is going to really improve your running form and help you kind of finish the race strong.
Huh. Damn. Yeah. I never thought of that. I'll add that in maybe like in the end of like a lower body day. Uh yeah, that's good because I'm sure I do that too on some long runs. So yeah, that's good.
Hmm.
Thanks, buddy. That's really good. Have
Yeah,
you
sure.
what so you did that Ithaca 50 miler, it had a ton of vert in there. What are you doing right now for frequency with leg training? Are you adding some of these in? I know after the race you mentioned to me that you were going to be, moving that way, that direction. So what's
Yeah.
that looking like for you now?
Yeah, so I'm running about 45 miles a week right now.
Wow.
So that's my running training. But as far as the strength stuff, I'm not
Yep.
doing anything systematic at the moment. I haven't put
Mhm.
together like a program that I want to do because I don't really have a race coming up right now. I'm just playing around with a lot of these things that we've mentioned, but I'm
Okay.
making sure that because I'm in the gym all week long, I'm doing the thigh band goblet squats
Yep.
at least once a week. I do rear leg elevated split squats at least once a week. And I
Hmm.
tend to do, yeah, I think I've done single leg deadlifts at least once a week for the past couple weeks. Um,
Hmm.
and last week I did the GHD hamstring curls also. So all of these
Hmm.
exercises we mentioned, I'm kind of picking some that are the ones that I think are the most effective. Like those are some of my
Hmm.
favorites, the ones I just mentioned. And I'm trying to
Yep.
touch on them at least once a week.
Hmm.
But when I have a race coming up, especially if I do that 50 miler again next year that has all those hills that just trash these muscles,
Hmm.
I'm going to try to make sure to do those exercises that I mentioned probably like twice a week. I think for
Okay.
frequency for runners, like if you can do this once a week, that's good. If you can do it twice a week, that's even better.
What are you doing for like weight, like on the split squats and the single leg deadlifts? Like I'm assuming you're not going your hardest because you don't want to be excessively sore,
No.
but what percentage of exertion would you say you're at? Like a 70%?
Yeah. Hmm.
Because like
Maybe because
there's
that's
a
not something
huge,
that I've ever maxed out on, so it's
yeah.
hard to estimate like what the percentage is of like my say my 1 rep max because I have no idea what that would be. But the dumbbells
Uh-huh.
that I'm using are what's that? 25-pound dumbbells for the rear leg elevated split squats, which for
Mhm.
me with a good full range of motion and nice controlled tempo, just working on my form, it gives me the feeling that I'm looking for anyway.
Okay. Yeah, that's about where I am with weight too. Cause I know if I start pushing the limits with like 70-pound single leg deadlifts, which I can do, or, 45, 50-pound split squats, I get wicked sore for like 2 to 3 days after.
Yeah,
And that doesn't
absolutely.
benefit running, biking, or swimming. Um, and
No.
then I think like my legs start to get thicker which I don't think again would help those sports so much. So I think there's a fine balance there. Like you don't want to like sandbag these exercises, but at the same time, I don't think you're looking to go heavy. But I'm not sure. I think in the winter time, I'm going to play around with some different protocols with that stuff. Because I won't be doing as much training, aerobically with those patterns. But yeah, it's interesting. So you're playing it pretty safe with that.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, I don't want to hypertrophy my legs. I'm not trying to grow
No.
bigger legs like a bodybuilder. That's not going to help me. I don't want to add weight to my lower body. And honestly, because of being in the gym for a couple decades, and at this point, my legs are fairly strong. They're
Mhm,
perfectly strong enough to do all these events that I want to do. But I just want to make sure that I'm hitting all those muscles on a regular basis, so that none of them are shocked by what they encounter out
mhm,
on a run.
mhm,
Because that's
mhm,
the one thing that I wish I had done before the ultra marathon. I didn't do any of these things, and so some of those muscles got more sore from the run than they probably would have if I had just been touching
mhm,
those muscles once or twice a
mhm,
week with
mhm.
moderate intensity, for the months leading up to it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like not having those muscles go dormant. So just keeping them awake and that muscle memory, I think is
Exactly.
enough to have a huge benefit. As opposed to like looking at like you need to make major gains with the lifts or whatnot. It's just more or less keeping that muscle memory alive. Yeah. Hmm.
Right. Because if you think about it, like, a lot of people know that if you if you take a few months off from the gym and you don't do any lifting or anything, and then you go back and you lift, even if it's exercise you've done a million times before, you're probably going to be really sore the next day because you just
Mhm,
haven't used that muscle in a while. Or if you're a regular gym goer and you switch up your routine and you add some new exercise, that new exercise will probably make you sore the next day just because you haven't done it in a while. And so when I get into a race, I don't want one of these muscles that I just haven't used in a while to be sore simply because I haven't used it in 2 months. So I want to like
mhm,
make sure I hit all these major muscle groups with some regularity before a big race, so that
mhm,
in the race they don't become sore just because that's the first time that they're being
mhm.
stressed.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I think a lot of runners would benefit from this episode, or endurance athletes in general. So many of them neglect strength training. I hear it on podcasts all the
Yeah.
time and in articles, because
Mhm.
a lot of the higher level people are putting in a lot of miles, right? And it's a
Mhm.
time thing. So if you have 8 hours per week, I think that's what John Kelly, the Barclays finisher, said he's doing like 8 to 10 hours a week. He's running during that time, but he's also said, and other people, that they know that they should be strength training. I know Alyssa Godsky that was on this podcast, very high level pro athlete. She said
Mhm.
that she definitely feels better, when she's strength training. So if they do, then we will.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. Cool. Andy, anything else for the listeners? This has been a great episode.
I think that's it. That's what I've got for today.
All right, cool. If that's it, we'll sign off, and thanks for everyone listening and supporting us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We'll see you on the next one.
One last message. I ask that you please check out our show sponsors, Lombardi Chiropractic, Home Sweet Home Cleaning, Native Pass Supplements, and Thin Line Martial Arts. Their links are in the description. Not only do these companies produce outstanding products and services, but they're providing an enticing discount to all listeners who use code COMO15. That's COMO15 at checkout or when you give them a call.